Question for you watching this video. If you were given a laptop valued between $2,000 to $4,000 and likely a cash tip to say good things about a product, would you do it? Well, let me welcome you to Influencer Marketing 101. And we are absolutely seeing that with inZOI, a new life simulation game that sprang up earlier this week. I'll also share my first impressions of the game itself, so let's get into it. Now, for those of you just finding this video and getting to know my channel, my name is Michael and I want to welcome you to Sovereign Gaming in Life Sims, the YouTube channel where I build worlds, lots, and share my thoughts on video games in the life simulation gaming space. Now, this week, inZOI, developed by Krafton out of South Korea, is taking the life simulation gaming community by storm, and it's no wonder why, as they clearly leveraged the power of influencer marketing to bring their product into the forefront of life simulation gaming discussions. Now, if you think that I am going to rag on about how influencer marketing is terrible and hate on it, you would be wrong. I do think that influencer marketing has its pros and cons, and I do have a professional background in marketing, so I somewhat know what I'm talking about. With that said, I think that the influencer marketing tactics used by Krafton's inZOI marketing team was very effective and clean. Plus, I also think that the influencers that they partnered themselves with know exactly what they are doing. In other words, this ain't their first rodeo either. Now, I believe it was in the middle of the 2010s where influencer marketing was beginning to become very problematic in that influencers weren't transparent enough with their sponsored content. However, I believe it may have been Facebook and Instagram that stipulated that sponsored content needed to be transparent in that it was sponsored, meaning that as an influencer, you had to use hashtags like #ad or #sponsored. There may have even been a court case involved in such a platform stipulation. Again, this is just from me recalling, so I'm not entirely sure on the accuracy of all that history. But I say that because nearly everyone that has been given early access to inZOI has said in their description, title, or in the video itself that it is a sponsored video. And therefore, the influencer has done everything in their power to educate their audience on what kind of content that they are consuming. I think that it is also important to note that, as far as I know, none of the influencer partners that produce these videos ever called their videos a review, so it's not like any miscommunications are being detected on my end, but feel free to correct me there if I'm wrong in the comment section below. I also feel that if you are agreeing to do a sponsored content, then you should be compensated for it as an influencer. And a laptop being valued at $2,000 to $4,000 and likely a contracted monetary amount is certainly a great contract for an influencer of any kind. Frequently, companies that partner with influencers give those influencers their product as part of their compensation. Obviously, I am not against influencer marketing so long as the influencer is transparent with their audience that they are consuming sponsored content. Personally, I'm seeing that these influencers are very transparent with their audiences, making sure that the viewer knows that they are consuming sponsored content. That I can respect, and I don't diss hustles like that either. If I were to ever do sponsored content and my channel's purpose is really just to eliminate any guilt I experience for playing video games at my age, I would absolutely let you guys know that it is sponsored content so that you can take what I had to say with a grain of salt and to decide for yourselves if you want to consume my content knowing that it has sponsored content within it. With all of that said, the problem with influencer marketing, especially these days, is that when the viewer is aware of the content being sponsored, they trust the spokesperson less. Personally, I think that Krafton saturated the digital conversation a little too much this week. I would have suggested that they only had like 3 larger influencers publish content per week and then gauge the reactions there, but that's just me being nitpicky. I think that this influencer campaign was actually a tremendous success at the end of the day for them, so bravo to that. Back to my spokesperson point. So yeah, whenever you have a spokesperson that is mentioning that they are paid to say something, it does make the audience trust them less. That's just a fact. Now, I know for a fact that there are simfluencers out there who are hungry for sponsors like this. and they really operate from a place of greed. Now, I won't be naming any names since this isn't a gossip channel, and honestly, they're easy to pick out if you know what to look for. But if we're talking transparently here, there's good money to be made being a YouTuber with an engaged audience, and the money gets better when the sponsor starts coming in. And then the money gets even better when you establish and maintain a relationship, a long-lasting relationship with a particular sponsor that wants you long-term as an influencer. Again, I don't see there being any problems with anyone accepting sponsors or changing their minds about producing sponsored content, but it becomes a problem to the public when those influencers sell out for anyone. I mean, if we just look at The Sims 4, it is a fundamentally crap game being promoted as the next best thing by influencers looking to turn a quick buck at the expense of a younger generation. Again, I'm not coming for anyone, but facts are facts. In other words, it is not by accident, but by design that a bunch of influencers were offered partnerships with inZOI to release content this week. Again, I have nothing but respect for everyone involved, but knowing the impact that Simfluencers have had on the life simulation gaming community, I consume all sponsored content with a ladle full of salt, to say the very least. So with all of that said, let's talk about inZOI itself. The graphics are stunning. But I know that you've heard that before on every inZOI video you've seen, and you really don't need me to hype that. You can clearly see that it is a beautiful game, and I just gotta say the team at Krafton did an awesome job with the design. Great job everyone involved. Since The Sims 4, there are players that don't even play their games. They're either building lots or designing sims, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, I consider myself more of a lot and world builder as opposed to someone who plays out different simulated lives in The Sims 3. Anyways, I'm getting a little distracted here. I can really see players that enjoy building lots and designing sims, or in this case ZOIs, really gravitating towards inZOI since aesthetics have clearly been prioritized. But when we take a deeper look in the game though, I do have to wonder if players are truly getting more options when they customize their ZOIs. As you can see on screen, there are no sliders for your body. It's just body type numbers, or just like body type number whatever. This also suggests to me that height won't be a slider either, which is something that other life simulation games are including. And that's something that the life simulation gaming players really wanted to have in their games as well. So they really wanted to have height and of course the body sliders too. So what could be problematic, but something that is also really easily solved, is the fact that the skin tone swatches are also seems a little limited. What makes this an easy solution is just inputting a color wheel as opposed to swatches. I mean, one of the greatest weapons against getting cancelled is giving the recipient of your message the power to choose anything. So in this case, if they would have just given players a color wheel for skin tone, they leave it up to the player with limitless choices. Very easy to do, and we know for a fact they have color wheels for their build modes, so it's just kind of like, why wasn't this same concept just copy and pasted over here? Granted, I know it's not as easy as copy and paste, but I think you guys kind of get what I mean here. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, or the color wheel in this instance. Anyways, this was a very easy solution, and any kind of insight into the Western market mindsets would have helped reveal this solution, in my opinion. Since no one else is really talking about it, I want to take a closer look at the world screen here. As you guys already know, I'm huge into world building and lot building in life simulation games. Since I obviously haven't played the game, I likely don't have the full picture to speak on it, but inZOI has been advertised to us as a life simulation game with an open world. Well, from the looks of this screenshot, it looks like the open world is a couple of city blocks. Although to be fair, this world could be just like the early access version of what will be released at the end of 2024. And like with my Life by You videos, my biggest question here is, does this worldview represent all of the lots available in the final game to be released at the end of 2024? And will worlds only feature certain portions of a map that is playable to the player, or will this expand with DLC? To me, the world map of Doan looks like an updated version of how Sims 4 neighborhoods function. And what I mean by that is that it looks like it's a neighborhood that functions in an open world format as opposed to just being an entire world or map that's actually open world. Personally, I haven't come across a life simulation game that hasn't underestimated the importance of world building. Honestly, like, this should be its own video, but if you are planning to build a video game franchise as opposed to a single entry video game, then you need to have a strong foundation that can support the franchise in its entirety. All of the Sims franchises, in my opinion, grossly underestimated the need for world building, and I hope that inZOI chooses to learn from their mistakes, or like their competition's mistakes, because honestly, their world building tools ain't all that. Okay, like, it's cool that you can change the trees, but can you change the placement of the trees in the world? You can change the ads on the buildings, but not where the skyscrapers are located themselves. I get it. World building isn't everyone's cup of tea, but we have seen it time and time again where DLC or an expansion pack gets introduced into a franchise, and then you need to rearrange your world in order to accommodate the new content that you've paid for. Well, how are you supposed to rearrange your world if you don't have the tools to do so? For example, what if there was DLC released that included a stadium? Are you giving up the save file that you have invested time into in order to play the content to get your money's worth in a new world that does have the stadium? Like, we need to really start to question what these life simulation games are going to look like at the end of the franchise, and how players can enjoy the entire spectrum of content released in that franchise. Another thing to note is that community lots aren't available to edit at this time. However, since this is early access, we need to give inZOI some grace and time to grow and change before its release in 2024. Okay, I'm gonna say something controversial yet brave here. I also wasn't that impressed with the weather mechanics, specifically with seasons. As someone who knows a tiny bit about programming, I know that it can be, maybe not relatively easy, but I know that it's kind of like the most uncomplicated ways to program like a screen of rain or snow to give it that aesthetic appearance. Again, because this is an early access game, I can give it some grace, but I don't think that seasons are necessarily in, since I didn't see the trees change either. Perhaps I just missed it in my research, so if I did, feel free to drop a comment below. Anyways, when all is said and done, I'm really glad to see more competition in the life simulation gaming space. In fact, that is something that we have been missing, and I don't get how it has taken nearly 2 decades before another gaming studio decided to give it a shot for developing a life simulation game. Anyways, like, this is real competition, and inZOI has got a lot of potential, much like Life by You does. And at this point, I just need to wait and see, like I am doing with Life by You. Specifically, I am curious what open world gameplay actually means in inZOI, since I have a sneaking suspicion that open world gameplay might refer to neighborhoods as opposed to entire maps/worlds, as we kind of saw in the screenshots there. But again, this is early access stuff. We're just being introduced to a new game, so those questions and answers will certainly be answered as time goes by, I'm sure of it. When it comes to the question of what the next iteration of life simulation games will be, it seems to be a battle of aesthetics versus gameplay versus legacy franchises. And I have to say that the splintering of life simulation gamers seems inevitable with this many choices at our fingertips. And like I said before, this is a very good thing. So, what does the next iteration of life simulation games look like? It could look like all of them. And if there's one thing that I would really like people to walk away with from this video, it's that you have a choice in everything that you do. With this last smattering of influencer-sponsored videos, these influencers intentionally did everything in their power to make the viewers aware that they were producing sponsored content. This puts the onus and responsibility on the consumer to make the most informed decision possible. You see, The Sims 4 profited off of their fan base by banking on hype and banking on players not doing their research. Then they strung them along in a franchise making broken promises while selling players features that were also still broken. In The Sims 4 base game alone, EA took away an open world concept and replaced it with a world that had less buildable lots than The Sims 1. I say this not as a criticism on players, as there are many who enjoy the game, and I say power to you guys. I say this as a fact, that at some point you do have to take responsibility for your purchasing decisions, and that includes the research that goes along with it. And, honestly, it is very easy to base your purchasing decisions on sponsored content if you don't take time to recognize sponsored content as such. There is one lesson that The Sims 4, and I would also say The Sims 3 should have taught life simulation players. It's that you really need to research and really look into the game before purchasing it. Or at least try to separate yourself from the hype. Question yourself what you're really thinking, what actually gets you excited as opposed to what's being purported to be exciting. Questions like that. And that right now there's a lot of hype surrounding inZOI at this time, and even though I am not seduced by the graphics, I still think that inZOI has a lot to offer for life simulation players everywhere, and I look forward to keeping my eye on it. At this time, I want to hear what your first impressions of inZOI are. Have life simulation players been seduced by graphics and sponsored influencer content? If you took away the graphics, what do you think of the gameplay that you have seen? Or are you, like me, more open to letting the chips fall, so to speak, and learning more about this game as time unfolds? Comment below with your thoughts. And until next time, I just want to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, then feel free to like it, and consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. Anyways, thank you again for your time, and please have yourself a wonderful day.